She was just a girl with a small frame, a quiet presence, and a love for music that could fill any room if she let it. From the moment she first touched the piano at a young age, there was something different in the way her fingers hesitated and then danced across the keys. Her mother had bought the piano secondhand, a little worn and chipped, but it had a voice of its own, and she was captivated. She would spend hours at it, her small fingers learning the feel of each key, listening as the notes floated into the air. But the world outside her small practice room was not always kind to dreams like hers. At school, she often found herself sitting quietly at the back of the music room, listening to others boast about their skills, or to teachers praising the more confident students. Some of them had been playing for years, and their fingers moved over the keys with ease, their music sounding effortless. Whenever she tried to play, she felt the weight of the others' expectations pressing down on her. She knew she wasn't the fastest, the loudest, or the most confident, and she could see the impatience in some of the teachers' eyes when she made a mistake. It hurt, but she didn't let it stop her. Every wrong note became a small lesson, every frown a reminder that she had to work harder. Her family, while supportive in small ways, did not always understand the depth of her commitment. Her older siblings were busy with school, sports, and social lives that left little time for quiet evenings at home. Her parents, though proud, often worried about practicalities, grades, responsibilities, the future. They encouraged her to study more, to balance her piano time with homework, and sometimes their words came across as doubts in disguise. "You're good, but don't expect to make this your life," one of them would say, not unkindly, but with a certainty that made her heart tighten. She nodded, smiling politely, while secretly wishing they could see what she felt inside when she played. There were nights when she would sit at the piano after everyone else had gone to bed, the house silent except for the creak of the floorboards and the soft hum of her music. She would close her eyes and let the notes guide her, imagining a world where every key she pressed brought color to the air. Sometimes the music was shaky, her fingers unsure, but other times it surprised her with its clarity and emotion. These were the moments she lived for, the moments that reminded her why she couldn't give up, no matter how many times others doubted her. School performances were always the hardest. She could feel the eyes of classmates, teachers, and family on her as she took her place on the stage. The bright lights and the expectant faces made her stomach twist into knots. When she first tried to perform in front of others, her hands shook, and she stumbled through the piece she had practiced so many times. The applause that followed felt polite, almost pitying, and she left the stage with a mix of embarrassment and determination. She wanted to show them, to prove that the notes weren't just sounds, they were a part of her. Friends at school would sometimes tease her, not cruelly, but with the casual skepticism of people who didn't understand passion. "You're really going to play that for everyone?" one would ask, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure you can do it?" Another would joke, "Better not mess up like last time." She would smile, nod, and take their words to heart, using them not as discouragement but as fuel. Each laugh, each doubt, became a quiet challenge she set for herself. She wasn't just learning songs. She was learning patience, resilience, and self-belief. There were pieces that took weeks to master, fingers raw and aching from repeated practice. There were moments when she would bang her head against the keys in frustration, tears blurring her vision as the notes refused to align. But she always returned, each day, each evening, determined to try again. Slowly, the mistakes began to vanish, replaced by small victories that no one else always noticed. A chord finally held steady. A melody finally flowed naturally. A rhythm finally matched the beat she heard in her mind. Her teacher, an older woman with a keen eye for talent, noticed the spark in her. "You have something special," she said one afternoon, after listening to her practice a difficult piece. "Not everyone can make music feel alive the way you do." The words were few, but they meant the world to her. Finally, someone else saw what she had always known inside. Encouraged by this recognition, she began to push herself further, exploring more complex pieces, trying out compositions that seemed beyond her reach, and feeling the thrill of conquering them. Despite her progress, doubt still lingered. The voices around her, Schoolmates, family, and even herself at times, sometimes whispered that she might not be enough. Maybe you'll fail, they seemed to say, and sometimes she believed it. But she also knew that each note she played, each practice session completed, was a step closer to proving them wrong. She imagined the day she would sit on a stage, under bright lights, and let her music speak louder than any words or doubts ever could. The community around her was small, but she found moments of encouragement in unexpected places. A neighbor would occasionally peek in to listen, nodding appreciatively as the music filled the room. A friend from school, who secretly loved piano but never had the courage to pursue it seriously, would sit quietly in the back of the music room, impressed by the dedication and emotion she poured into her playing. These small pockets of support became lifelines, reminders that even if some doubted, others could see the potential. In her bedroom, her sanctuary, she would sometimes imagine what it would feel like to perform at a grand venue. The audience waiting, the air thick with anticipation. She would picture herself walking confidently to the piano, taking a deep breath, and letting her fingers glide effortlessly across the keys. She imagined the surprise on people's faces, the way the music could capture their hearts and turn their skepticism into awe. These dreams fueled her determination, keeping her going even on the days when mistakes felt like mountains she could never climb. Even with all the struggles, she learned to find joy in the small victories. A tricky passage finally played correctly, a rhythm finally steady, a melody finally flowing. These moments made her heart swell. She learned that success was not always about applause or recognition, but about the satisfaction of knowing she had given her best, of seeing improvement born from persistence. Each day at the piano became a testament to her resilience, a proof that even when the world doubted, she could rise above it. As the months passed, her confidence grew quietly, like a seed breaking through the soil. She still felt nervous before each performance, but the fear was now mingled with excitement and anticipation. She knew that failure was possible, but she also knew that she had worked too hard and loved the piano too much to let doubt stop her. Her dream of turning heads and proving herself was no longer just a fantasy. It was a goal she was steadily approaching. By the time she was ready to consider performing in a local recital, she had transformed from the quiet, hesitant girl at the back of the music room into a determined young pianist. Her skills had grown, her emotions had deepened, and her love for music had become unshakable. Those who had doubted her might still expect her to falter, but she carried within her the quiet strength of someone who had faced challenges, practiced relentlessly, and refused to let fear dictate her path. Even now, as she prepared for the first real test of her talent, she took a moment to sit at the piano and breathe. Her hands hovered above the keys, feeling the familiar coolness of the ivory beneath her fingertips. She thought of all the nights she had practiced in secret, of all the mistakes she had turned into lessons, of all the small victories that had brought her to this moment. And she smiled, because no matter what happened next, she had already achieved something remarkable. She had believed in herself when no one else did. After months of quiet practice and small victories, she began to notice changes in her playing. Her fingers moved with more confidence, and her ears caught the nuances in the music that she had struggled to hear before. She started exploring more complex pieces, challenging herself to reach beyond what she had thought possible. There was an excitement in the challenge, a thrill in mastering something that had seemed impossible just weeks before. Each new piece became a puzzle she was eager to solve, and she approached it with the patience of someone who had learned the value of persistence. Her evenings were now filled with long practice sessions that stretched late into the night. The house was quiet except for the soft sound of the piano and the occasional creak of the floorboards. She often lost track of time, becoming completely absorbed in the music. Sometimes she would make mistakes, hitting wrong notes or misjudging the rhythm, but she treated each error as a step toward improvement. She would pause, replay the section, and try again over and over until it felt right. It was exhausting work, but she felt alive in a way that nothing else could match. Occasionally, her mentor, a patient and insightful teacher, would visit to guide her. The teacher had seen many students come and go, but there was something unique about her approach to music. "You have a gift for expressing emotion," the teacher said one afternoon, leaning over her shoulder as she played a difficult piece. Don't be afraid to let yourself feel every note. That's what will make your playing unforgettable. These words lingered in her mind, encouraging her to connect not just with the keys, but with the music itself. She learned to let her feelings guide her fingers, to add subtle nuances and dynamics that made the pieces her own. Beyond her mentor's encouragement, she found inspiration in unexpected places. Sometimes she would listen to recordings of famous pianists, trying to understand the techniques and emotions behind their performances. She didn't imitate them, but rather absorbed their lessons, adapting what she learned into her own style. She also discovered that music could tell stories, that a single melody could carry a world of feelings. This realization deepened her love for the piano and pushed her to explore her creativity more boldly. At school, she became more willing to share her progress, though nerves still tinged each attempt. She would perform short pieces for friends who were curious, sometimes in small practice sessions during breaks or after class. Their reactions were mixed. Some were genuinely impressed, while others were still skeptical. Instead of discouraging her, their mixed reactions became a motivation. She wanted to show that her talent was not a fluke, and that her dedication had shaped her into a pianist who could truly move people. She began experimenting with composing her own music. Sitting at the piano late at night, she would hum a melody and try to capture it with her fingers, piecing together harmonies and rhythms until they felt complete. These personal compositions were different from anything she had played before, reflecting her thoughts, her experiences, and her emotions. There was a vulnerability in sharing her own music, but also a freedom. It was her voice in its purest form, and every note she played carried a part of herself. Her confidence grew alongside her skill, though it was still tempered by a natural humility. She knew she was improving, but she also recognized that mastery was a journey with no end. She continued to face moments of self-doubt, especially when tackling a particularly difficult piece or preparing for a performance. But she had learned to channel that doubt into focus, letting it sharpen her attention rather than hold her back. Every challenge became an opportunity to prove to herself that she could rise above uncertainty. As the local recital approached, she began to practice with purpose. She selected pieces that would highlight her strengths, showcasing both technical skill and emotional depth. Her evenings were now structured around preparation, each session building on the last. She practiced slowly, then gradually increased the speed, paying attention to phrasing, dynamics, and expression. She imagined the audience, picturing their reactions, feeling their anticipation, and allowing that energy to guide her performance. In these preparations, she also discovered the importance of resilience. One evening, she struggled with a particularly challenging passage, her fingers stumbling repeatedly despite hours of effort. Frustration threatened to overwhelm her, but she reminded herself of the progress she had already made. She took a deep breath, stepped back, and approached the section with renewed focus. Slowly, patiently, she mastered it. The victory was small, almost invisible to anyone else, but to her it was monumental. It reaffirmed her belief that persistence could overcome even the most stubborn obstacles. Outside of practice, her life continued with the usual rhythms of school, chores, and social interactions. Yet music was no longer just a hobby. It was a driving force in her life. She carried the lessons from the piano into other areas. Patience, attention to detail, and the understanding that progress often came in small, incremental steps. Even moments of doubt or criticism no longer held the power to stop her entirely. She had developed an inner resilience that allowed her to continue moving forward. Her family noticed the changes too. Though still cautious and practical, they began to see her growing confidence and dedication. Occasionally, a parent would pause at the door, listening quietly as she played, a faint smile on their face. There were still words of caution, reminders not to get too carried away, but these were now balanced with recognition of her hard work and talent. She felt quietly proud that she had earned this acknowledgement without needing to ask for it. Schoolmates began to notice as well, especially those who had once doubted her. Some were surprised by how much her playing had improved, while others grew curious about her dedication and skill. She didn't seek their approval, but their reactions reinforced her understanding that effort and persistence could change perceptions. Slowly, the whispers of doubt that had surrounded her were replaced with a growing awareness of her abilities. The night before the recital, she stayed up late at the piano, going over her pieces one last time. The house was dark and silent, the world outside sleeping, while she immersed herself in the music. Her fingers moved almost instinctively, a rhythm built from months of practice and discipline. She felt a mixture of nerves and excitement, knowing that tomorrow would be the moment where all her effort met the reality of an audience. Yet she was ready to face the doubts, the expectations, and the unknown. That as she finally closed the piano and stretched, she felt a quiet confidence settle over her. She knew that mistakes could happen, that nerves might shake her hands, but she also knew that she had done everything possible to prepare. The music had become a part of her, a reflection of her dedication and passion. No matter the outcome, she had grown in ways that mattered far beyond applause or recognition. And for the first time, she truly believed that she could stand before others and let her music speak with power and clarity. She went to bed that night with a sense of calm determination. The moonlight spilled through the window, casting a soft glow on the piano keys that had been her companion through countless hours of practice. She closed her eyes, imagining the performance, picturing herself playing with confidence, grace, and emotion. The doubts that had once seemed so loud were now quiet whispers, and in their place was a steady resolve. She would play, and she would show the world, and most importantly herself, what she was capable of achieving. The morning of the recital arrived, and with it, a mixture of excitement and nerves that made her stomach flutter. She woke early, her mind buzzing with thoughts of the music she had practiced for so long. Every detail replayed in her head, the notes, the rhythm, the subtle pauses, and the crescendos. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that felt both comfortable and special, as if it could help carry her confidence onto the stage. The piano waiting for her was no longer just an instrument. It had become a bridge between her dreams and reality. When she arrived at the recital hall, she was struck by the size of the space. Rows of chairs stretched out before her, the stage bright with lights, and the hush of an audience settling in for the performance. Her heart raced as she peeked from behind the curtain, seeing faces she recognized and many she didn't. Some of them carried expressions of doubt or curiosity, while others seemed genuinely interested in the music they were about to hear. She felt the weight of their eyes on her, and for a brief moment, the nerves threatened to overwhelm her. She reminded herself of the months of preparation, the late nights, and the endless hours of practice. Every mistake she had made, every small victory she had celebrated in private, had led her to this moment. She closed her eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and allowed herself to feel the music that had been growing inside her for so long. This was not about proving anyone wrong. It was about sharing a piece of herself through the notes that flowed from her fingertips. As she stepped onto the stage, the audience's murmurs seemed to fade away. She positioned herself at the piano, feeling the familiar touch of the keys beneath her hands. The lights were bright, the air thick with anticipation, but she found a quiet center inside herself. She remembered her mentor's words, "Let yourself feel every note." And so she did. She let her fingers move, guided not only by training but by emotion, letting the music speak before any word could. The first notes filled the room, hesitant at first, then gradually stronger, more assured. She could see some faces in the audience shift, curiosity turning to attention, doubt softening into focus. Her fingers danced over the keys, the melody flowing naturally as she lost herself in the music. She felt every chord, every pause, every soft touch as an extension of herself. The nerves that had gripped her moments ago began to dissolve, replaced by a deep connection to the music and the room itself. Some of the more difficult passages came, and for a heartbeat, she hesitated. But she remembered the late nights of practice, the repeated mistakes that had become lessons, and she pushed forward. Each note landed with precision and emotion, the audience becoming silent witnesses to her talent. She noticed small changes in their expressions. A slight widening of eyes, a nod of appreciation, a whispered gasp. The room was alive with the music, the atmosphere charged with energy she had only dreamed of. For the first time, she realized how powerful her music could be. It wasn't just about hitting the right notes. It was about conveying feeling, telling a story without words. The melody carried joy, sadness, anticipation, and hope, all at once, and she felt the room respond to it. People leaned forward, captivated, some closing their eyes as if trying to absorb every sound. Even those who had doubted her abilities were now listening intently, unable to ignore the skill and passion she poured into each phrase. Midway through her performance, she felt an unfamiliar confidence swell within her. Her hands moved with ease, guided by both memory and instinct. She could see the audience's reactions subtly changing, the skepticism giving way to admiration. The energy in the room fed her, and she allowed herself to play more boldly, letting her emotions flow freely. Each chord, each arpeggio, became a statement, not just of her skill, but of her perseverance and dedication. As the piece reached its climax, she poured all her energy into the music, feeling a rush of exhilaration. Her fingers moved faster, yet controlled, the rhythm steady, the melody soaring. The audience was spellbound, caught in the moment, responding instinctively to the music's ebb and flow. She could see the surprise and awe on the faces of those who had once doubted her. Their disbelief had transformed into admiration, and it filled her with a quiet satisfaction that was stronger than any applause. Finally, the last notes lingered in the air, fading into silence. For a moment, she held her hands above the keys, letting the quiet sink in, listening to the collective breath of the room. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started as polite clapping, then grew into enthusiastic cheers and stomping feet. People rose to their feet, clapping, smiling, some even wiping tears from their eyes. She felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. She had done it. She had faced the doubts, the skepticism, and the fear, and had emerged triumphant. As she rose from the piano, the audience continued to applaud. Some of the teachers who had once questioned her abilities came forward, offering congratulations and words of praise. Her family, sitting in the front row, beamed with pride, their earlier worries forgotten in the face of her achievement. Friends who had been skeptical looked at her with newfound respect, their expressions a mixture of surprise and admiration. She had not only played the piano, she had told her story, shared her journey, and captured hearts with her music. Backstage, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. The adrenaline that had carried her through the performance slowly subsided, leaving a warm glow of satisfaction. She reflected on the months of preparation, the challenges she had overcome, the countless hours spent practicing in solitude. Each small victory along the way had led to this moment, and she understood now how far she had come. The doubts that had once seemed overwhelming now felt distant, insignificant compared to the proof she had given herself and others. Her mentor met her backstage, smiling with pride. "You did it," the teacher said simply, and it was enough. Those words, along with the applause and the reactions of the audience, confirmed what she had always believed. Her talent, her passion, and her persistence could overcome any skepticism. The girl who had once sat quietly at the back of the music room was now a performer who had commanded a room with her music. Even after the recital, the effect lingered. People spoke of her performance for days, praising the emotion, precision, and dedication evident in every note. The experience gave her confidence that went beyond the piano. She realized that when one believes in oneself and works tirelessly toward a goal, the results can exceed even the highest expectations. She had proven that talent alone was not enough. Commitment, practice, and courage were equally important. That night, as she sat alone with the piano once more, she reflected on the journey. She played a few soft, simple pieces, letting the music flow freely without concern for perfection. Each note reminded her of the months of effort, the struggles and triumphs, and the joy that came from sharing her gift with others. She understood that the performance was not the end, but a milestone, a glimpse of the potential she could achieve with continued dedication. In the days that followed, She noticed subtle changes in her interactions at school and in her community. Teachers looked at her with a new respect, classmates were more attentive, and even casual acquaintances seemed curious about her music. Yet, she remained humble, knowing that the performance had been a moment in time, and that growth and learning would continue. The applause and admiration were gratifying, but they were not her sole motivation. Her love for the piano, the thrill of creating and sharing music, remained the driving force. She continued to practice daily, now with a stronger sense of purpose. The pieces she had once struggled with became easier, new challenges emerged, and she embraced them with determination. Each practice session was a reminder of her journey, the obstacles she had faced, and the resilience she had developed. She knew that future performances would bring new challenges, but she also knew that she was ready to face them with the same dedication and courage. Her success at the recital became a turning point, not just in her skill, but in her confidence and self-belief. She realized that the opinions of others, the doubts and skepticism, were external factors she could not control. What mattered was her commitment to her craft, her willingness to persevere, and her courage to share her music with the world. In that moment, she understood that her journey was just beginning, and that the piano would always be her companion, her outlet, and her voice. After the recital, the girl felt a sense of exhilaration she had never experienced before. The applause, the smiles, and the astonished faces of those who had doubted her filled her with pride. Yet she remained grounded, knowing this was only the beginning. The experience had changed something inside her. She now understood that her music had the power to move people, to make them feel, to surprise them in ways she had only imagined. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a desire to continue growing and sharing her talent. In the days that followed, she began to receive invitations to perform at local events and community gatherings. Some were small, informal settings, while others promised larger audiences. Each invitation brought excitement and nerves, but also a sense of validation. She had worked tirelessly, and now the world was beginning to notice. She approached each opportunity with careful preparation, choosing pieces that would challenge her and showcase her growing abilities. Each performance became a stepping stone, a chance to refine her skills and express herself more fully. Her reputation slowly began to grow. Teachers and musicians in the community spoke of her dedication and talent, and some even offered to mentor her further. She felt humbled by the recognition, but she also knew that talent alone would not sustain her. Discipline, practice, and emotional connection to the music were just as important. She continued to dedicate long hours to the piano, always seeking to push herself beyond what she thought possible. One day, a local music school invited her to perform in a larger recital, one that would include several skilled pianists from around the region. The announcement made her both nervous and excited. This would be a bigger stage, a more critical audience, and a new challenge to test her abilities. She spent weeks preparing, choosing pieces that were technically difficult but also emotionally expressive. She practiced tirelessly, replaying sections until every note felt natural, and every phrase carried the emotion she wanted to convey. As the day of the recital approached, she felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. She remembered the first time she had performed and how nervous she had been. Now, she carried the experience of past performances, the lessons learned from mistakes, and the confidence built from overcoming challenges. Yet, she still felt the familiar flutter of nerves before stepping on stage. It was a reminder that she cared deeply about her music and about sharing it with others. The recital hall was larger than any she had performed in before, and the audience included experienced musicians, teachers, and critics. She took her place at the piano, feeling the weight of their attention. The lights were bright, and the room was silent, waiting for her first note. She closed her eyes briefly, took a deep breath, and allowed herself to connect with the music. This was her moment to not just play notes, but to communicate, to reach people in a way words could not. From the first note, the audience was drawn in. Her fingers moved confidently across the keys, producing sound that was both technically precise and emotionally compelling. She played with a depth of feeling that surprised even her, letting her experiences, struggles, and triumphs flow through the music. Each chord, Each pause, each flourish carried meaning, and the audience responded with rapt attention. She could feel their curiosity and skepticism turning into appreciation and admiration. The most difficult pieces came, and for a moment, she felt the familiar tension of fear. But she remembered all the practice, all the late nights, all the times she had refused to give up. She let that determination guide her fingers, and the music soared. The room seemed to hold its breath, and she played with a sense of freedom and control that she had never felt before. It was as if the music had taken on a life of its own, carrying her and the audience along in a shared experience. As she continued, she noticed subtle reactions in the crowd. Some leaned forward, eyes wide, caught by the skill and emotion of her playing. Others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. The skeptics, those who had expected hesitation or mistakes, were now completely absorbed. Their expressions softened, surprise and admiration replacing doubt. She could feel the energy of the room, the connection between her and the listeners, and it strengthened her performance, making it even more powerful. By the time she reached the climax of her performance, she was fully immersed, lost in the music yet aware of the audience's response. Her fingers flew over the keys, each note precise, each phrase expressive. The audience was silent in awe, waiting for the final chords. When the last note faded, the room erupted in applause, cheers, and standing ovations. She sat back for a moment, letting the applause wash over her, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. She had not just played music. She had created an experience, a moment that people would remember. Backstage, her mentor and family rushed to congratulate her. The pride in their eyes was unmistakable, and she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The performance had been more than just a recital. It had been a turning point, a confirmation of all the effort, dedication, and passion she had invested in her music. She realized that the doubts of the past, the skepticism of others, and the struggles she had faced were now part of a story of triumph and growth. The experience also taught her humility and gratitude. She understood that talent alone was not enough, and that guidance, support, and hard work were essential. She thanked her mentor, who had believed in her from the beginning, offering patience, advice, and encouragement. She also felt grateful to her family for their quiet support, even when they worried or doubted. Every person who had been part of her journey had contributed to this moment, and she acknowledged that with a sense of deep appreciation. Over the following weeks, she continued to perform in various settings, each time building confidence and refining her skills. The music became a central part of her life, not just a hobby or talent, but a means of communication and self-expression. She explored new pieces, experimented with compositions, and even began mentoring younger students who showed interest in piano. She shared her experiences, teaching not just technical skills, but the importance of perseverance, practice, and passion. Her story began to inspire others. Friends, classmates, and community members saw what dedication and belief in oneself could achieve. Some who had once doubted her abilities became supporters, encouraging her and celebrating her successes. She realized that her journey was not just about personal achievement. It had the power to influence and inspire others, showing that talent combined with hard work could overcome skepticism and fear. She continued to dream, imagining larger stages, more challenging performances, and opportunities to share her music with wider audiences. Yet, she remained grounded, focusing on the process rather than just the outcome. Each practice session, each performance, each challenge became an opportunity to learn and grow. She knew that her journey with music was ongoing, and that every note she played was a step forward. Through all these experiences, she discovered the joy of connecting with people through music. She realized that her talent was not just a personal achievement but a gift to share, a way to touch hearts, evoke emotions, and create moments of beauty. The power of music to move and surprise people became evident with each performance, reinforcing her commitment to continue pursuing her passion. In time, she understood that the most important lesson was not just about skill or recognition, but about belief in oneself. The doubts, the skepticism, and the struggles were part of the journey, shaping her into a resilient, dedicated, and expressive musician. She had learned that perseverance, courage, and love for what one does could overcome obstacles and create moments of magic. And with every performance, she continued to prove not only to others but to herself that she was capable of achieving remarkable things through her talent and dedication. The days after her major recital were filled with messages of congratulations, invitations to perform, and opportunities she had never imagined. The girl found herself busier than ever, yet every engagement felt like another chance to grow, to connect, and to share the music that had been the center of her life. She accepted each invitation with a quiet excitement, knowing that every performance, no matter how big or small, was a chance to inspire and move people. One evening, she was asked to perform at a community charity event. It was a small hall, but the audience was diverse, including children, elderly people, and music enthusiasts. She prepared carefully, choosing pieces that were both challenging and emotionally expressive. She practiced with diligence, recalling the lessons of past performances and letting them guide her approach. The night arrived, and as she stepped onto the modest stage, she felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but also a deep sense of readiness. The lights were soft, and the audience waited quietly, expectant but patient. From the first note, she felt a connection with the audience. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, the music carrying emotion, telling a story without words. She could see children leaning forward in curiosity, adults nodding in appreciation, and some quietly closing their eyes, letting the music wash over them. The hall seemed to breathe with her, every note creating a ripple of emotion that connected the performer and listeners. She felt a warmth spread through her as she realized that the music had touched people's hearts, surprising them, delighting them, and leaving a mark that words could not capture. After the performance, she received heartfelt compliments from the organizers and the audience. Some expressed astonishment at her skill, others shared how the music had made them feel, and a few even admitted they had doubted her abilities before hearing her play. The girl listened, humbled, understanding that this response was a testament not just to her talent, but to her perseverance, practice, and dedication. She had turned skepticism into awe, just as she had imagined long ago. Encouraged by her growing recognition, she continued to explore new challenges. She began experimenting with compositions of her own, blending traditional pieces with her original creations. The piano became not only a tool for playing music but a canvas for her expression. Each new composition reflected her experiences, emotions, and observations of the world around her. It was a journey of self-discovery as much as a musical endeavor, and she poured her heart into every piece, knowing that the audience would feel the sincerity and passion behind it. Over time, her reputation as a pianist grew beyond her local community. Teachers, musicians, and event organizers began to take notice, offering her more significant opportunities. She was invited to larger stages where the expectations were higher, but so were the rewards. She approached each new performance with careful preparation, respecting the audience, the music, and herself. She understood that her journey was not about fame or recognition, but about sharing her gift and inspiring others with dedication and heart. Despite her increasing success, she remained humble and focused. She never took her talent for granted and continued to practice diligently every day. Each session at the piano was a reminder of the journey she had undertaken. The late nights of practice, the mistakes that became lessons, and the moments of self-doubt that strengthened her resolve. She understood that each note, each melody, and each performance was part of a larger story of growth, resilience, and the power of believing in oneself. Her family and mentor continued to support her, offering guidance, encouragement, and perspective. They reminded her to balance her life with other responsibilities and to appreciate the journey as much as the achievements. Their presence provided comfort and motivation, reinforcing the idea that talent alone was not enough. Support, guidance, and discipline were equally important. She felt grateful for their unwavering belief in her, which had helped her navigate challenges and celebrate successes. One day, she was asked to perform at a regional music competition, where many skilled pianists would showcase their abilities. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, knowing that the stage would be larger, the audience more discerning, and the scrutiny higher. She dedicated herself to preparation, selecting pieces that demonstrated both technical skill and emotional depth. Hours of practice, careful attention to expression, and a focus on conveying the music story guided her every movement. She knew that this performance would be another milestone, another opportunity to prove to herself and others what she was capable of achieving. The day of the competition arrived, and she felt the familiar nervous energy as she stepped onto the grand stage. The hall was filled with musicians, judges, and music lovers, each waiting for the performances to begin. She positioned herself at the piano, feeling the smooth keys beneath her fingers and the weight of the audience's attention. She took a deep breath, allowing herself to center her thoughts, and began to play. The first notes were clear, precise, and filled with emotion, setting the tone for the rest of the performance. As she played, she felt a connection with the audience that transcended words. Her music carried the story of her journey, the struggles, the determination, the joy, and the perseverance. The notes flowed naturally, guided by months of practice and the depth of her emotions. She could sense the audience's engagement, their admiration, and their surprise at the depth and maturity of her playing. She realized that her music had the power to communicate beyond language, to move people, and to leave a lasting impression. When the performance ended, the audience erupted in applause. The judges, impressed by her skill, emotional expression, and stage presence, offered praise and encouragement. She felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond winning or recognition. She had shared her music, told her story, and connected with people in a way that only music could allow. The experience reinforced her belief in the importance of perseverance, dedication, and following one's passion. Following the competition, she continued to perform in various venues, each time growing more confident and expressive. She discovered that the true reward of her talent was not in accolades or recognition, but in the joy of creating music, the impact it had on listeners, and the personal growth it fostered. Her journey had transformed her from a quiet, uncertain girl into a confident, resilient pianist who could captivate any audience with her talent and dedication. She also began to inspire others. Younger students, friends, and community members looked up to her, not only for her skill but for her dedication, resilience, and ability to overcome doubt. She shared her experiences, teaching others that talent is important, but belief in oneself, practice, and perseverance are what truly allow someone to succeed. Her story became a living example of how hard work, passion, and courage can turn skepticism into admiration and dreams into reality. Years later, she reflected on her journey and the challenges she had faced. The doubts, the skeptics, the mistakes, and the late nights of practice had all been essential parts of her growth. They had shaped her into a musician who not only had technical skill, but also the emotional depth and resilience to share music in a way that touched others. She understood that every challenge had been a lesson, every mistake an opportunity, and every small victory a step towards something greater. Her music continued to evolve, and she pursued increasingly ambitious performances, always driven by a love for the piano and a desire to connect with people. She never forgot the early days of doubt and struggle, and those experiences became a source of strength and inspiration. They reminded her that talent alone is not enough, and that perseverance, dedication, and belief in oneself are what turn dreams into reality. In the end, she realized that her journey was about more than just music. It was about resilience, courage, self-belief, and the power of dedication. Her story, from a quiet girl with a second-hand piano to a pianist who could captivate any audience, was a testament to the idea that even in the face of doubt, determination and passion can create something extraordinary. Her talent had turned the room upside down, but it had also transformed her, giving her confidence, purpose, and a life filled with the beauty of music.